we're focusing on the only Jackal class setup you'll need, and this is a returning series I used to have on the channel where I kind of deep dive into all the various attachments that are important on the weapon, and that by the end of it you'll have a good idea on how to build the weapon for yourself, whether or not they buff it or nerf it in the future. So I'll start off with recoil and have every combination of recoil pattern here. We have the base version up here on the top left, and then this is the base with vertical, precision, ranger, and then we got recoil spring. So those are all the four of those. And then when you go ahead and combine these, down we have compensator of the base, muzzle by itself, ported by itself. And then what will happen is when you combine these, we can kind of see it makes the little grid here. So this will be vertical plus compensator, precision plus compensator. So you can kind of see what we're working with there. And then we have recoil springs, and then this is recoil spring plus the vertical plus the precision. So you can kind of see we've covered all of the bases to kind of figure out which attachments we need and how can we save attachments, getting the best recoil possible with as few attachments as possible. And then what we end up seeing is if we only want to use one attachment, the vertical is probably one of the best recoil adapters that we can have. If you want to combine two attachments, you can see that the recoil springs plus the precision also very good. So it's kind of like an odd combination there, but this gives you kind of all the various recoil patterns to work with. If there's other guns you'd like to see this stuff for, let me know which guns down in the comment section. This video hits over 2,000 likes. We'll go ahead and start working on that one because these ones do take a little bit of time. So we can see that we probably have a good one there. I do like the compensator combo there of the vertical. Let's see which other, we got maybe the port compensator plus the precision over here. I don't really, maybe this one here, but that's like 3 attachments. We're combining muzzle brake plus recoil springs plus the vertical grip. It's kind of a lot for an SMG to have all of that. And you can kind of see the ranger, it never really gets rid of any of these recoil jiggle right there. It leans a little bit, it's okay there with the compensator, it's okay. Another problem there, like you can see all these little elbow looking things, it just doesn't solve for it unless you combine some other attachments. So now that we got an idea what the recoil patterns are, factor those into kind of how I'm building out the weapon, it ends up being that vertical by itself tends to do a really good job. And if you need more help, vertical plus compensator is insanely good. Compensator plus ranger is okay as well. The other thing to be aware of is the in-game stats, and these are pretty accurate. The only one where it kind of gets a little bit wonky is when it comes to sprint to fire as well as slide to fire times. Those ones are a little bit inaccurate, but they are accurate relative to the attachment. So for example, if you go ahead and put on a rear grip that's going to help with aim down or sprint to fire time, it won't improve it by 30 whatever 2%, but the difference between 110 and 75, it will reduce it by around that, around 30-ish milliseconds, 35-ish milliseconds there. So that part is accurate. It will still be higher than that number. It'll be over 100 in hand testing. So this is all the various ones that impact sprint to fire time, testing them in the fire range. As soon as I get an impact on the button, then you can see how long it takes. To the naked eye in full speed, you're not gonna be able to tell much of a difference. But through testing, they ended up being faster and slower than each other by 1 to 2 frames. So what we can see here is when we look at the base versus fast mags versus extended mag 2, which actually is kind of odd in this game because it will slow down your sprint to fire time by about 1 frame relative to the base. And if you're just using fast mags, it's a difference of 2 there because you're going from -1 up to +1 right here. And then we also get the assault grip, which will speed it up by 2 frames at 60 FPS, be like 4 frames at 120, 8 frames at 240. You kind of got to do the math there. This is at 60 FPS. Commando grip, also very good. Close quarters grip also is giving you that -1, and ergonomic won't really help the sprint to fire time, but you can see it's drastically helping out over here on the slide to fire time. Like I said, the number in game isn't quite accurate, but relatively speaking, when you adapt it, you're seeing those positives and negatives. The CQB grip just didn't, in testing, like you saw there, I went and tested all of these manually, and we just didn't get that same gains from it. So if you really like the slide to fire, now you kind of have 2 options. I didn't really consider too much of the CQB previously, so there are some trade-offs there. The ADS is faster with the ergonomic, but the sprint to fire time is a little bit slower. So there are a little bit of give and take there. Let's talk a little bit about how the stocks will impact your movement speed. The no stock, you can see here, it helps with movement speed. Include your tack sprint speed, but not your sprinting movement speed. So your base sprinting speed won't change with no stock, but your walking and tack sprint speed will, even though they just don't have a line for tack sprint and it's not included in there. Infiltrator stock's gonna be best for the strafing speed. Heavy stock, not so much. The balanced stock kind of gives you the best all-around mobility while helping your aim down sight strafe speed a little bit. So you can see aim walking 4.1 versus 4.3. So it's kind of a negligible difference there. You're still getting a little bit out with the balanced stock. And then the combat stock, you can see it does help with flinch resistance and aim speed, but it's not giving you as much as the infiltrator, and it's kind of evened out with the balance. So you might as well go with the balance so you get a little bit better walking speed, crouch movement speed, even though those aren't as important, and then you're kind of good to go. Next up is the barrel. We're gonna go ahead and look at the effective damage range. We can see right here it's 11.4. The next damage is right around 20, and then we get up to around 28, and then it doesn't drop off again after that. We can look at the individual attachments here and what they're gonna go ahead and do. The gain twist is only helping out bullet velocity, which would be advantageous for the long range options if you really want to go ahead and push it out and maybe you're challenging people further. But overall, the base of 530 is more than enough for an SMG, especially when that gives you a hit scan of around 25. You're going to be able to have a decent amount within 25. You're going to be able to, the bullets will hit instantaneously. You won't really have to worry about drop off. The long barrel pushes up our distance from 11.4 up to 13.7. Reinforce is kind of like halfway in between, and it's going to give us a little bit of extra bullet velocity, maybe not necessarily necessary. Those extra 2 meters or so in that first damage range will be super impactful, and then the extra 2 to 3 meters in that next damage drop off will also be impactful. If you want to see what the TTK feels like with the build as well, I'll be able to show you that in the firing range, because there's a way you could test out each individual drop off. Short barrel for a specific playstyle, I wouldn't really recommend. And then the CHF, it just increases the neck multiplier at the cost of recoil. So not really worth it. You're generally going to come down to these three. Since this is a close range option, you either go long barrel or reinforced. And for my preferences, I think long barrel is a better option because you're almost getting up to 14 meters. So we'll go ahead and start plugging these attachments on. We get the vertical magazine. We go with the extended mag 1 instead of 2 because obviously we don't want all those penalties that we're seeing on this end here with the 2. It just adds too many penalties, in my opinion, to be worth it. And the reload will be slower when you do that as well. Then we go rear grip. We get all the benefits that we're looking for, the CQB. And then we're going to go ahead and grab the stock, which will be the balanced stock, which gives us all those movement things, except for sprinting, unfortunately. If you want to see the TTK drop-offs, pretty much what you would see here, on the moving target side, when you press down on the D-pad, it'll pop out the target, and it adds around 4 meters to each of the damage ranges. So you can see this is the first damage range from 0 up to that 14-ish meters. That's the TTK at that range. And then now we're going to have the next TTK, which goes from that about 14 all the way up to around 24-ish, which we'll see right now. Go ahead and take out the target. That's the second damage range. And now that's going to push all the way to 24. So that's where the damage range is going to push out that extra 4 meters or so from running the specific barrel. We get the good sprint to fire time. We get the good ADS time. We get a good slide to fire time. We get the good dive to... It's kind of like the jack of all trades build, especially because of the recoil pattern. It allows us to build out the build the way we would like. Somebody was asking why I got hit markers, because there's a dummy behind there. That's the 5 attachment build. If you want to do the 8 attachment build, now we get a little bit more free reign on what we can do because we're not tied to it. And you don't have to use every attachment. Keep that in mind. If you want to leave it at the buy station, it'll be cheaper than the 6,000 and more than 2,500 if you don't use all of the 8 attachment slots. Go suppressor, which could be valuable at staying off the mini map, especially since we don't need extra recoil reduction. We can go over pressured if we want the extra muzzle velocity to be a little more accurate. And then we can just stop right there. We don't need all the attachments. 7 attachments, perfectly fine. If you want to put on an optic, you're good, at least until they fix the bug blueprint on the VMP, so that you'll be able to use those, which are a little bit cleaner. So appreciate you guys watching the video. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button. If you want to find your way back, make sure you're subscribed and let me know what is the next gun you'd like me to do a breakdown on. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.